the certifications attached to both of those motions. Mr. Frazier, would you do it since you made the motions?
I have to find this.
I can do it if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier, that'd be great.
Do each of you certify that, to the best of your knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened or heard, discussed, or considered by the Board of Supervisors in closed meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you very much. That takes us to the first item on the agenda tonight. We have 2 public hearings scheduled tonight. During each public hearing, there will be an opportunity for the public to speak. The first public hearing we have scheduled for this evening is item N1, public hearing for the Broadband Authority review and consideration. Mr. Curry, would you care to cue this up for us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. As the board is aware, over the last several months, you've been discussing how to properly invest the CARES Act funding that came from the federal government through the state. And one of the topics you discussed was potentially investing in local internet providers, broadband providers, to improve our citizens' access to broadband. Upon reviewing all of our opportunities, Mr. Goff and I determined that the Board of Supervisors cannot invest into a private company without receiving a good or service in return, so you can't subsidize a business. However, economic development authorities and broadband authorities are set up specifically for such engagements or business arrangements wherein you can try to level the economic field to make it a profitable endeavor for a company to come provide services to your citizens to bridge a financial gap. To that end, the board requested Mr. Goff and I to work with the Broadband Committee, who were quite frankly ahead of us at that time, and develop a resolution to establish a broadband authority, which includes articles of incorporation for that body. Ms. Bond actually provided a very good head start for Mr. Goff and I in preparing that documentation. Mr. Goff and I polished it up and then provided it to the board at an earlier meeting at which you authorized us to advertise that resolution, including the articles of incorporation, for a public hearing 30 days in advance. That notification occurred, is attached to board docs. And now that the ad has been in the paper for over 30 days, you can open a public hearing and hear what the public has to say about creating a broadband authority here in the county. It's important to note that a broadband authority is similar in some regards to a water and sewer authority in that they can seek revenue bonds to fund projects. So if they can convince a bond-holding agency that there's enough revenue in the future for ratepayer services, then they can borrow money in anticipation of getting that revenue. They cannot tax and they cannot place any financial obligation on the county itself. And they will be completely separate. Now, the resolution provided identifies that each of the 5 board members will be the starting members of the authority. And thereafter, up to 2 board members could resign, providing their seats to be for citizens. But at all times, there would have to be at least 3 board members, or no more than 2 non-board members appointed to that authority. Mr. Groff, anything to add?
Just that the authorities could not pledge to defend the county for any bonds that would be issued. That's about all I have.
Say that again, Mr. Goff.
That the authorities could not pledge the credit of the county in repayment of any bonds that it issues.
It has to be solely tied to revenue projections for the services that the authority itself would provide, right?
Right, and so convincing a borrower, a lender, to do that may involve. I mean, the only people who might lend it might be the people who are participating in providing the service.
Sure.
But the county can't, by statute, be obligated to repay those.
And using the water and sewer authority as a comparative example, my understanding is that that authority began with the infusion of grant money from both federal and state agencies. And from that point forward, over time, it became a self-sustaining revenue, self-revenue generating based authority, which it sounds like this is what we would be headed toward here, except that there would be no seed money.
Not from, well,
Well, there would be no seed money like the sewer authority had. I just want to make sure of that.
Well,
They're starting with nothing.
There always could be seed money, but there is none contemplated at this time.
Okay.
And those would be decisions for you or a future board to determine.
Yeah, because I mean, our constituents are concerned about that. Okay.
two different things, you know, getting an appropriation from this board is not the same as pledging the credit of the board and repayment of a debt that didn't have anything to do with creating or authorizing or spelling out the terms. So, but yeah, what your model is correct, that you know, they can tap into these grants and other federal funds that may or may not become available from time to time to get it up and running, and then of course they get to set fees for the services that are provided.
In many situations, the structure of those federal funds may, by definition, flow to the county, and the county must then pass them to the authority, who would then invest them in the broadband provider. And in those cases, this board would probably want a three-way agreement between the Board of Supervisors, the authority, and whoever's getting the money to make sure your money, citizens' money, is properly invested. And that's what we've seen in other localities such as Fauquier right now, where they have an agreement between the Board of Supervisors, Economic Development Authority, and then their private provider.
And so for the record, there's nothing contemplated in this draft resolution authorizing the formation of the authority that would obligate Rappahannock County taxpayers to anything. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I would say that is correct on its face. But Mr. Curtis might have some more experience in this area than I do. But I think initially you're going to have to provide for the care and feeding of this authority, at least initially. You know, offices and support personnel and so on, that you wouldn't be able to provide for yourselves necessarily.
Staff time, file support, copy support, and things like that.
It's nearly immaterial, I would say. I mean, we're using existing staff and resources.
We provide similar to the Recreational
Yeah.
Facilities Authority
Yeah.
and the Water
And
and
to the
Sewer Authority.
Broadband Committee currently as well.
And to the Broadband
Yeah.
Committee.
So, I mean, it's basically doing the same work as the Broadband Committee, but
Yeah.
leveraging the can-do ability of an authority to move what that body can't get done.
That's right. The great advantage is that you didn't get to funnel the funds that do become available into public-private partnerships for the development of you know, the contemplated end of the project, and that is to provide the actual technology and internet service to the county.
Okay.
Thank you, Art, and thank you, Gary. I think that's a good introduction. Does anyone have anything further to add at this time? And if not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. All right. With that, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. I would ask that you observe a few rules when you participate in the public hearing. I would ask that you raise your hand if you wish to speak. This is the public hearing, in particular for the Broadband Authority review and consideration. There will be a separate public hearing after this for the consideration of monetary bonuses for county employees. And there will be a separate comment period later in the evening if there's anything else that you would like to comment on. So this public hearing in particular is for the Broadband Authority review and consideration. I would ask that you raise your hand and wait to be identified, and then approach the microphone, identify yourself by name and the district in which you reside, and if you would keep your comments to less than 5 minutes, we should be all set.
And
Have I
then
missed
just
anything in
note, there are a
particular?
few people online, and
Oh, great.
once you finish with people in the audience, then you can open it up to folks through Zoom.
Great, thank you so much, Gary. That's a wonderful addition that we're offering this evening, is that folks are able to participate in this meeting on Zoom, so we will engage them as well. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? If so, please raise your hand. If there's, oh, yes, Ms. Kressinger.
I'll say something. I want somebody else to be brave too.
Thank you, Sheila.
Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I'm really pleased and excited that this opportunity seems to have developed into something that we can actually use to develop the broadband that we are sorely needing in this county. I think the Broadband Committee had done a lot of groundwork for several years and then apparently hit the stone wall of obtaining money and how could we do that. And then the COVID thing came up and really illustrated how terribly critical it is, not only for our students, but also for telehealth and all other kinds of communications. So I'm really hoping this thing can get off the ground, and I congratulate everybody who's worked on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gressinger. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Mr. Glennie.
I'm getting good at that. Paige Glennie, Jackson District. As I stated before, I was opposed to this authority, but I am now in support of it with the, what I believe, reasonable conditions that you all have put into it. The number of supervisors, the majority of supervisors are on board. My main concern is that taxpayer dollars, other than administrative overhead, are not spent on it at all. So if I'm not getting the service, I ain't paying a dime. That's my number one concern. I think you have enough protections in there, and I hope the members of the board that are on the authority maintain that protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glennie. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? If there's no one else that wishes to speak to the Broadband Authority item on the agenda in the courtroom, we'll go ahead and see folks on Zoom. If you would like to raise your hand on the online platform, there are several options where you can raise your hand. If you would like to raise your hand, we can identify you, and Mr. Curry will unmute your microphone so you may participate in the public hearing as well. So if you would like to participate on Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. You have anyone, Mr. Curry?
Being none at this time.
Very good. If there's no one that wishes to speak on Zoom at this time regarding the Broadband Authority review and consideration, and there's no one else in the courthouse that wishes to speak at this time to this agenda item, I will declare this public hearing closed. And I would look to my fellow members of the board for motions, thoughts, or discussion of this item.
Madam Chair, if I could remind the board members that Mr. Whitson and myself met as the Rules Committee, and we had discussed, needing some protections, and I think Mr. Curry and Mr. Goff, using, I guess, the template that Ms. Bond already had been working on, that I think we're in pretty good shape.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Anyone else?
Chair Smith, I would love to make a motion that we, the board, vote to authorize the creation of the Rappahannock County Broadband Authority at this time.
Thank you. Specifically by adopting the resolution in the packet.
Resolution.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Is there any further discussion?
I have a personal issue, and that is that I own property that a broadband company is looking at for a site. And to avoid a conflict of interest, I'm thinking I probably should not be on this board.
So the way the structure is set up with each of you would be on the board at formation, and you can, at very first action, resign.
Okay.
So I think that would be fine from a conflict of interest perspective?
And you feel you can act in the public interest as a group of 3 or more?
Well, I probably can, but I got to worry about what the public thinks. If
Sure.
if I stand to profit from this, yeah.
It's a conflict of interest.
And I'd rather, I'd rather take the money than have,
Now, that was honesty.
You can't abstain from the vote.
Well, and I think we,
well, no, if I can resign after we get on the first meeting, that'll work.
I mean,
Before we make any decisions.
yeah, I think we did discuss this initially because I remember this concern. And I think as long as you're not taking any specific action, as long as like your first action is to resign, it should, I would think it would be okay.
Okay.
It was good working with you. You've been a great colleague.
Yeah, really.
I just wanted to thank everyone for their hard work on this, the folks on the Rules Committee, Mr. Curry, Mr. Goff. I think the challenge of how to do this and access the monies that are available to rural localities to develop broadband programs is very challenging. And I think we are building this specifically not to cost people money. I hope people understand that. We're doing this specifically to save people money. Because until we go through these formalities, we don't really have a way to access those monies. And that's the purpose of the exercise, in my opinion. So I hope everyone appreciates that, and I thank staff and the Rules Committee and the Broadband Committee all for the integral roles that they have played in this.
Yeah, and I think we need to acknowledge Margaret Bond for doing so much of the legwork to get us to this point. So thank you for your contributions and authoring, and it really got us off to a good start and helped expedite this, so thank you.
I'd echo all that. With that, if there's no further discussion, is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. Looks like a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Ms. Donahue.
Aye.
Mr. Whitson.
Aye.
Mr. Parrish.
Aye.
And I also. Thank you, everybody, very much. That takes us to the next item on the agenda, the public hearing, consideration of monetary bonus for county employees. Again, Mr. Curry, I would ask you to cue this up for us, please.
Thank you. The General Assembly, when they first convened this year, included a 2% bonus for state-funded employees in their budget. And then COVID came and the 2% bonus was unallotted and basically taken out of the budget. And during the reconvened session, during their consideration of whether they should re-allot the unallotted funds, the General Assembly ultimately decided to not do that, but to include a $500 bonus for sworn law enforcement officers who are funded by the state. And each locality has a rather complex process through which a portion of the constitutional officer employees are funded by the state, others are local only, and those that are funded by the state are only partially funded by the state. Here in Rappahannock County, we have 8 such officers who are sworn officers funded by the state. And so the Commonwealth of Virginia is providing the county $500 plus the employee share of FICA, so $538.25, to pass on to our sworn officers who are funded by the state. Unfortunately, we have additional sworn officers who are not funded by the state. So it sets up a situation where some officers could get a bonus and others wouldn't. And that expands to some members of the sheriff's office would get a bonus and some wouldn't. Or some employees of the county could get a bonus and some wouldn't. So when the board discussed this topic at your last meeting, you authorized me to advertise a public hearing for monetary bonuses that was flexible. It would allow the board to hear from the public to determine how the public felt about monetary bonuses, whether they be for only sheriff's office employees or for all employees or no employees. But it was only up to $538.25 per employee. That could be prorated for part-time if necessary. The Code of Virginia requires bonuses to be paid only after adoption of an ordinance. And ordinances can only be adopted after a public hearing, which is why we're here tonight. The ordinance that you can use that has some blanks in it to fill out who gets how much is included in the packet, if you're so willing. It was advertised in the paper 2 successive weeks as required by the Code of Virginia, and is now acceptable for the board to hold a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. And just so just to refresh my memory, regardless of how we feel about the rest of the sheriff's office and the rest of the county staff, changing the ordinance is required in order to do what the state has asked us to do as well. Is that correct?
You cannot grant an employee a bonus without passing an ordinance, adopting an ordinance.
Okay.
Whether that be the 8 that happen to be funded by the State Compensation Board, sworn officers, or any other county employees. And I think that the General Assembly had good reason to do that, so that you didn't have boards without the notice of the public providing taxpayer dollars in the form of bonus to employees.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or anything to add? Oh, very good. And with that, I will open up this public hearing. Again, this is specifically on the topic of consideration of monetary bonus for county employees. There will be still an additional public comment period. We ask that you abide by the same rules as the earlier public hearing and raise your hand, approach the microphone, identify yourself and the district that you're from, and there will be an opportunity for folks to participate via Zoom as well. With that, I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Again, this is the public hearing regarding consideration of monetary bonuses for county employees. If there's no one that wishes to speak in the courthouse, I know we do have some folks that have joined us via Zoom, and you can certainly use your option to raise your hand on Zoom as well.
Chair Smith, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ellis.
Public open forum for any subject.
This is specifically regarding the employee bonuses, and there will be, after this public hearing, there will be a public comment period. I know that gets confusing. Thank you for bearing with us. And if there's anyone on Zoom that would like to speak, please use that platform to raise your hand at this time. If there's no one that wishes to speak on Zoom either, and no one's raising their hand, it looks like, Gary.
No, I haven't.
Thank you. And is there anyone in the courthouse that wishes to speak? Very good. I'll declare this public hearing closed. Thank you, everyone. Fellow members of the board, I know we had sort of had a discussion about this at our last meeting. How are you disposed toward this topic this evening?
I'll go ahead and kick it off, I guess. As I said earlier, I wouldn't be opposed to maybe somehow making tax dollars available for all the sworn officers in the sheriff's department, but I've gotten several calls. I don't know why the people aren't here. They said they'd be here. They're not here. But they're opposed to giving our employees who, you know, even though they're loyal and dedicated, they've never received any furloughs, no reduction in hours, no lost paychecks, and you're asking people in the community that have had all of that happen to them to give somebody that's got a job a bonus, and I can't support that.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Anyone else?
Mr. Frazier, when you're saying the sheriff's office staff, are you talking about the 22 or the 8?
No, I guess the 22 or whatever that number is, because they're, yeah, I don't know why the comp board doesn't recognize that we need more staff than they pay for.
Agreed.
Just to be clear, and it's included in board docs, that 22 full-time staff include all staff in the sheriff's office. That'd be from dispatch all the way through the sheriff. and 4 part-time, which includes the bailiffs that work here in the courthouse. And just want to make sure it's clear who that is.
Right. Sheriff's Office employees. I really appreciate the hard work and dedication of all our county employees, but I've been here for quite a while and we've never had a furlough, never had a layoff, a reduction in force, never did an employee miss a paycheck. And I know right there in my community, there's people that have missed paychecks.
I would just say the counterpoint to that, and the reason that I think we should probably recognize all county staff with the larger program, as I referred to earlier in our afternoon meeting, there is some work that we intended to get to this year. In particular, the personnel guidance regarding salaries from Baker Tilly this year, and because of our abbreviated meeting format and having to meet remotely, we have not been able to get through those recommendations and the employee pay scale review this year as we had hoped. That was a large item in our budget. I want to say it was about $130,000, $140,000, Mr. Curry, if my memory serves correctly. And we set it aside early to make things work this year in the budget. So we once again asked county employees to take the hit kind of for everybody else. And we're halfway through the fiscal year, or we soon will be, and we're coming up on another budget cycle. I don't think we're going to get it done before the budget cycle. And so I think the earliest we could hope to do what we hope to accomplish this year is with the budget that we'll adopt in June. So I guess from my perspective, this was something that we probably can and should do for employees because we were not able to work through the employees' pay scale review that we had as we had hoped. If the other members of the board are of a mind not to do that, I certainly understand. I understand times are tough for a lot of people. And I by no means mean to slight any of those people by trying to do right by our employees also in the process.
As I understand this, well, for one thing, the state is putting us in an awkward position. They're offering up $4,000 more or less. And are we in a position just to say, no, we don't want it? I mean, because it's going to be pretty hard to, just arbitrarily pick, 8 employees and exclude the rest. So I kind of tend to agree with Ms. Smith on this one that we could kind of make up for a little lost time and spread a lot of goodwill around. I sympathize with those citizens that have lost their jobs, and I'm not sure how many of them could have been benefited from these loans and the PPEs or whatever they're called from the state, and it's a lot of unknowns here. So I'd be interested to hear what the other members had to say on that.
As I mentioned in our last meeting, this whole discussion basically is driven by this potential state allocation of money to sworn officers. The $4,000, I don't think we turn it down. I mean, I don't know that there's even a mechanism to turn it down, and I wouldn't feel good about making that decision. I mean, the state's sending this money our way. It's going to the sheriff's department. Point being that the only reason we're talking about this, at least from my perspective, is because that $4,000 was put upon us. So the question is, do we just let that flow into the sheriff's department, let the sheriff
decide how she wants to allocate it. Obviously, if she allocated to everybody, you're talking about a denominator of 22 people and $4,000, which is frankly immaterial from a,
And I don't think you have that opportunity, because the officers who are compensation board funded are identified.
okay.
They will get the $500.
I see, okay, yeah. So, I don't feel it's the right time to be extending bonus money to every employee in the county, and that number frankly is a big number. I believe the calculation is over $30,000, and I don't support that. So at a minimum, I think we allow the state money to go into the sheriff's department, and then the question is there anything additional? And there was a figure in here of $8,000 that would basically give the sheriff the flexibility to make sure that she didn't have to lead people out within the sheriff's department. These are obviously people who've been working without really a break during this whole process. So I have no interest in moving forward with bonuses for all county employees. We let the $4,000 flow into the sheriff's department. If my colleagues, if you decide that more should be done in the sheriff's department, I might be willing to support that, but I can't support anything beyond the sheriff's department.
And when we met last, I was in the group that wanted to go ahead and pay for bonuses for all county staff. After reading emails and speaking to some citizens, I have changed my mind on that one. I am definitely in support of the 8 officers and could go for the 22 if that's what the majority of the board would like to do.
All right, then. I guess the best way to move this forward is we do have to have this ordinance authorization, and that will require some filling in the blanks. And it sounds like there is consensus on the board for a way forward, so would someone like to make a motion in regards to the ordinance and fill in the blanks?
If it's not clear, the intent was to identify which employees would get $538.25, which would get half of that, or you could strike through that. And I guess when it was if it's completed, it could be full-time, part-time, and sheriff's office employees or something like that.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I think given the fact that law officers in general are operating under tough times right now, there's just a lot of stuff going around that's not making their job any easier. And so I'm okay. This was going to cost the county, it looks like $8,612 if we allocate a bonus for the entire sheriff's office. So I'll make a motion that we go ahead and do that. And that would not include the county employees. We can actually, when we create our budget in the spring, we can look, see what we can do for them. So my motion would be to allocate the funds for the sheriff, for the entire sheriff's office.
I think to fill in the blanks on the resolution, that would be $538.25 for full-time sheriff's office employees and $269.13 for part-time sheriff's office employees. Is that correct, Gary?
It could be, or full-time, part-time, and then paid to sheriff's office employees.
Okay.
But the way you did it works well too.
Okay, and then paid to sheriff's office as part of the mid-December payroll cycle. Is that a suitable, you feel comfortable with that motion,
Yes.
Mr. Parrish? Thank you for making that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. This is a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Ms. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to the public comment. This is a public comment period for anything on the agenda or not on the agenda on which you might wish to make a comment. Again, please raise your hand, come to the microphone and address your comments to the board. Identify yourself by your name and the district in which you reside. And if you keep your comments to less than 5 minutes, we should be all set. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us through the public comment or the public hearings. And the public comment period is now open, so if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Yes, sir, Mr. Ellis.
I'm Roy Ellis from Scrabble. I was here earlier today and spoke on the sports activities at the school where the children aren't allowed to have more than 2 adults per child at their games, and adults couldn't attend away games. I've lost a lot of faith in federal and state government, which is why I've been coming to some of the board meetings. I've had problems with the sports activity we talked about. Christine addressed that with me moments ago. I don't know if that's coming from the state or if it's something that the school board did themselves. Second Amendment inquiry, the Second Amendment
Sanctuary.
sanctuary thing, which you all took care of. I really appreciate that. And Christine, I appreciate you addressing my problem almost very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
And the elections we're going through now. I don't have any real numbers right now for the elections in Rappahannock County. I've heard we had a real good turnout of 102%. I don't know if that's true or not. And I have a question for somebody, the board or somebody. Was our machines in this county connected to the internet? I'd like to get an answer from somebody in this county about that. But aside from that, I didn't even get to my seat hardly today before an official came in with another mandate, a health care mandate for the county. And you all voted to approve it. It's not going to cost us any money. It's just another mandate from the state. And I see that as another camel getting his nose under the tent, like so many of these mandates. It says it won't cost anything, but if you send an officer goes up to a Chester Gap and arrests somebody, they have a health issue, and he's got to wait an hour for somebody to come from Culpeper or Warrenton to address that situation. There's going to be reports that have to be written. The sheriff's going to get involved. It'll cost something. So that's what we don't know where that would go. When a healthcare official gets involved with police enforcement's involved there, we don't know where it could go. He could ask about a person's family. Does your family have guns in their house? This type of thing. He could want to go see those guns maybe. We don't know where that would go. So I'm asking you all to make this the quickest 180 flip for an issue that maybe you've ever had. You approved it this afternoon. I'm asking you to overturn this thing tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Yes, Mr. Yao.
Hi, everyone. Robert Yao from Piedmont District. I wasn't sure if I was going to come up here and speak tonight, but I thought I would. First thing, and I want to say in regards to the comp plan, I'm just going to say one phrase. Pass the proposed comprehensive plan. Let's make it happen. I'm a little disappointed with some of the recent changes and not having the maps, but we need to get something updated on the books. And let's make it happen tonight. The other thing I wanted to bring attention to, it's not in relation to what's on the agenda, and maybe you all have followed it, maybe not. But there will be a bill coming up in January in the state legislature for HB Bill 961. It was carried over from this past the 2020 session. It was not passed, but it almost did. It is a highly unconstitutional ban on firearms, magazines. To my knowledge, the most common handgun that people have out there, it's a Glock, and that comes with a standard 15, 17 round magazine. And under HB 961, if it's passed, that becomes a felony. And if you have more than one magazine, that's 2 felonies or 3 felonies. That is unconstitutional. And I know we're a Second Amendment sanctuary status. We talked about this last year. I got up here at the school last year and talked. And I know we again spoke back in July. But just keep it on your radar. And if you want my personal opinion, I think you ought to draft a letter to the state legislature, and tell them that you are not in favor of that bill, nor any bill that is unconstitutional and goes against the Second Amendment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Is there anyone, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please, Sheila. And if you're online on the Zoom platform, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll identify you momentarily. Ms. Gressinger?
Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I just want to reiterate what the young man just said over there, is that I hope we're at the part where we can actually get this comp plan closed. It was never supposed to be an ongoing kind of thing, open for discussion forever. It needed to be closed, and then we'll go on to the next one. We can always put amendments in, that kind of thing. And so I think maybe communication, a communication like that when people come up and say they want to add to the comp plan, to say, thank you so much for your idea. We can put this into the next one, and so people will start to get in the habit of understanding that it's not just an ongoing thing where you can just stand up forever and never close the thing. So I think Phil Irwin was happy with it a year ago, and I think it may be an honor of him you can get it done. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom that has their hand raised, Mr. Curry?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. If there's no one that wishes to speak in the courtroom, I will declare the public comment period closed. That takes us to the next item on this evening's agenda, Q1, Old Business, the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Mr. Curry, could you lead us through an introduction on this item, please?
I'm not sure the item needs any introduction. But allow me to say that the Code of Virginia, Section 15.22225 requires the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing on a proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan. That public hearing was held on August 19, 2020, at which time the Planning Commission recommended approval of the plan that was advertised for that public hearing. Subsequently, the Planning Commission forwarded to the board some errata that they recommended, some minor changes. The Code of Virginia, Section 15.22226 requires the Board of Supervisors to hold a public hearing on to receive input from the public on the plan that was recommended by the Planning Commission, which you did on October 5th, 2020. Since that time, the Board of Supervisors has reviewed the input from the public and reviewed the plan, and the board has had the option to adopt the plan as provided, amend and adopt the plan, or reject the plan, returning it back to the Planning Commission for further study. The board must adopt the plan within 150 days of the receiving the resolution recommending the plan from the Planning Commission. I previously noted that date to be the end of December in error. It's actually January 16, 2021, so you have plenty of time, and if you adopt it tonight, you certainly meet that deadline. There is a resolution included in the packet, board docs, that the board can use to adopt the resolution. The resolution that I prepared does include wording in the resolved paragraph that would allow subsequent non-substantive formatting and proofreading related amendments by county administration. Board can retain that or eliminate it if you, depending on how you see fit. The document, subject to approval, is attached to board docs and has been for the last couple of days, or day, perhaps, both in a clean version as well as a version that tracks changes, for the most part, from the 2004 version that is your current comprehensive plan. Board docs also includes all of the graphics, so this way there's no confusion as to what the board is agreeing to approve, if you so approve, or you can very clearly identify any changes that should be made to the documents that are presented here to be approved tonight or some other night.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Discussion or motions in regard to the comp plan agenda item? Fellow members of the board, how did you wish to proceed?
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the resolution appended to the agenda, which would in turn adopt the amended comprehensive plan as presented for discussion. I will go ahead and make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson, and do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. Discussion.
Does this motion cover all of the work that you've recently done? Because I really, to be honest, I haven't had a chance to proofread what you put together, so I don't know how that would, or might change something. So I'd kind of like perhaps to amend your motion, if you could, to adopt the last version that we worked on as a body. It was, say, November 16th or whatever it was, 18th. And then we could perhaps look at, we've got to do the maps, and your motion didn't include the maps either, but I think that we should at least include all the maps except for the village maps, which were under some sort of misunderstandings. So when we work on those maps as a body, right after the first of the year, we can include a lengthy look at all the work that you've done recently. But I haven't really had a chance to look at how all that work that you did may or may not change the actual text of the document. And again, we still don't have any word on the maps in your motion. I thought we had agreed that we would adopt it with the commercial plan map and pretty much all the maps except for the village maps.
Let me just chime in and say that the plan as attached incorporates all of the maps by reference in the table of contents. They are part of the entire plan. So the village maps, as was discussed at a recent meeting, are no longer included in the document. As a matter of fact, they were map numbers 15, A, B, C, D, and those are completely gone. Map 15 is now the designated scenic byways because it moved forward in sequence. So the plan is complete as attached. The proofreading edits that Mr. Whitson provided, Supervisor Whitson provided, I went through and incorporated those edits that were objective. Anything that could be considered subjective, I did not include it. And that can be left to some other day.
See, I haven't had, I mean, some of this came in over the weekend, and the public hasn't had a chance to look at it. That's kind of one of the reasons why I think that we should hold off on that particular version. You looked at it, Mr. Whitson's looked at it, but the public hasn't had a chance to look at it. It showed up on board docs pretty much over the weekend.
Indeed it did, and the board could choose to adopt now or another time. I think it is problematic to try to adopt a version that is not clear as to what it is, and trying to think back to what we didn't have a version that incorporated the items that the board discussed at the last meeting. One did exist in between meetings, but I don't have that version prepared. The version that is attached to board docs that tracks changes has purple track changes for everything that was done by the Planning Commission, and it has red changes for everything that was done by the board. So you can see the distinction of what was sent to the board and what happened once it arrived at the board.
I mean, I guess I have a serious misgiving similar to Mr. Frazier's in that, we have planning commission edits that were worked through by the full body of the planning commission. We have edits that were done at the board level as a group that we all agreed to as a plan of action, to have one meeting that was the joint meeting. And then we all had follow-up items for the next meeting and action items for the next meeting. And we all were prepared for that meeting and executed the plan at that meeting, except at that meeting, it was brought forward, and I don't mean to single you out, Mr. Whitson, but what you said specifically was spelling, grammatical, and stylistic changes. So we came up until the week of Thanksgiving, and the day before Thanksgiving, we received, I would say, quite a bit of feedback for changes to this plan. The changes kept coming and coming and coming.
Chapter by chapter.
Until Saturday evening. And then the changes were completed by midday yesterday. And at that point, this comprehensive plan was posted to board docs.
That's fine. I'm not, I typically, I don't sign or approve anything that I haven't read. And I can characterize all these changes as truly non-substantive proofreading type edits. I think it's now a fairly clean document. I went ahead and just did the work, and could I have completed my work sooner? I suppose in a perfect world I could have, but I didn't, but I got through all 116 pages or whatever it is. So it's all there, but I'm not going to stand in the way of the adoption of the comprehensive plan. So the rest of the board can do what they want. I just don't think that what I provided here is that big of a deal. And what I have provided here, I think, makes it a more polished document. And considering all the focus on this document, the fact that it's a foundational land use document for the county, and we're all putting our name on it, and it's important to many, many citizens as evidence tonight, I just thought that we should at least put forward something that is proofread. So that's what I did. But I'm not going to, I have no pride of authorship. So, I mean, I did the work, and I thought it would help, but I'm not going to stand on that. So if you want to revert back to an earlier version, it's fine with me.
I think there's perfectly, good characteristics to doing a thorough proofread. I certainly don't object to a good proofreading. My objection is the timing of the proofreading and the lack of possibility for review by not just the members of this body, but by members of the public
As I
of
said,
that proofreading.
Yeah, we can revert.
So I just wanted to make clear that it has nothing to do with proofreading or you personally. I just think that in terms of the review and seriousness of this document, I don't want to have 24 hours only to review something. And that's not entirely your fault because it wasn't released to us chapter by chapter.
So I was going to say that, we could delay this process for years, and we already have. And we have a document that we pretty much agreed to. I read through the changes that Mr. Whitson made. There's none of the meanings changed whatsoever. It's just a comma here and a capitalization there, and it's just innocuous little changes that I was happy to live with. And we've all agreed that we can go back and edit at any time, even next month. Even if we pass it tonight, we can re-edit it next month. So I see no harm whatsoever to going ahead and passing this tonight. I think a lot of citizens are waiting for that to happen. And it'd be, dangerous to put it off until next year when we possibly will have new members on the Planning Commission. And they're going to want to, put their brand on on the document. So I would like to call the question and let's go ahead and vote on it.
I think we had a motion. Did we have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Well, just to be clear, for the purpose of building consensus, could we omit, and this is something that, other members of this board agree to all the time for folks that haven't had a chance to review minutes, things of that nature. Could we adopt the comp plan tonight without the edits that we received yesterday? And either meet later again this month or consider those edits at the January meeting?
So in the event that we did not get around, because as you know, 2 years ago, there was a consensus to put the comprehensive plan to public hearing, and all this would have been done 2 years ago had it not been for one snow and ice storm that canceled the meeting. And so, and maybe it's okay because there has been some fine tuning to the document in the meantime. But if we did that, Ms. Smith, then what would be, our official document would be the one with all the little errors, and they're not, they don't change the meaning of anything. I'm surprised how many there were, and it did look sloppy. But if we did what you suggest, then we would just, I think Mr. Curry said he didn't even have that on hand.
Well, if he can put the edits in, he can take the edits out.
Well, if I could interject for a
Or he
second.
can leave them in and we can discuss them one by one.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, if I could just interject for a second before I forget the thought. If we have a resolution that Mr. Curry has put together that says that we would adopt it, except for some minimal edits that they could make administratively, we could withhold that authority back onto ourselves, and we could review those things before they make the final cut. Which it wouldn't go back to the planning commission. Nobody else would have a reason to delay it any further. We would be looking at it probably at the very next meeting.
The effort that went into that, the edits, I greatly appreciate, and I do believe a lot of it needs to be in there, but I think there's the will to make sure in Mr. Irwin's memory that we move forward with the comprehensive plan. I would be very interested in having a meeting later this month and adopt today the old one and adopt in a week or whatever the new one. So that it's all clean, everybody has a chance to read it, and you start out the new year with a very crisp, clear, professional document.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. I would say I was hoping, and I think we all were on board with having a second meeting if necessary to get this done on the 14th. However, the Planning Commission has scheduled a meeting on the 14th at 7 o'clock. So we cannot meet on the 14th. Are there any available dates and times to which we could continue, Mr. Curry?
Is this going to require any extra advertising?
Well, regular meeting notice. I am troubled with the thought that a document will be adopted tonight that is not clear as to what you're adopting. And so it's my strong recommendation that you either adopt what's posted or adopt nothing and then adopt at some subsequent meeting.
What's the paragraph where you reference the changes that staff can make?
Last paragraph, resolved.
So I think we can adjust this pretty easily. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Rappahannock County that it's adopted, that the revised and updated Rappahannock County Comprehensive Plan amended from that recommended by the Rappahannock County Planning Commission as included in the posting meeting agenda materials this day is hereby adopted, allowing for subsequent non-substantive formatting and proofreading related amendments by county administration or the Board of Supervisors?
I would just reserve it to the board if that's what.
I would say then by the County Board of Supervisors.
Obviously, the Board of Supervisors always is empowered to change the document, right? The county administrator is not, and that's why it reads the way it is. If the board wants to change the document and re-adopt it, you can do that every meeting.
It's going to be difficult if more than one person decides, what's proper grammar or what's the spelling. I mean, for example, let's just say, using the possessive pronoun for a gerund. A lot of people aren't too worried about using the possessive pronoun for a gerund, and that's could be in here. And I just don't want to get in an argument over simple grammar or spelling or capitalization or commas,
I agree with you,
And that's
which is-
all,
which
that's
is
all
why
Mr.
I-
Whitson did.
Which is why I didn't really understand the value of those edits to begin with, but,
So maybe they were not completely necessary, but they didn't hurt anything. And I would say let's adopt it. People are waiting for that. We can review it anytime next year, any month we want to. And if there's any objection, we can review it, and I'm perfectly open to that.
I do want to make clear that I was following through on the action that was taken by the board at the last meeting, which was to incorporate the items that you specifically identified that I reiterated back and make these non-substantive, proofreading changes,
Right.
which was done. So I did what I felt the board directed me to do at the last meeting.
I understand that,
And,
Mr. Curry, and I really do think that the volume and timing of the changes put you in an unenviable position. And I feel like the volume and the timing of the changes put me in an unenviable position.
So Chairman Smith, excuse me for interjecting, but the county administrator works for us. He is challenged with the proofreading related amendments, if there's any subsequent ones. We can, take the time tomorrow and read the little adjustments. And if there's anything specific that any of us want to correct, we just call our employee here and have him do that. We can do that individually. We don't have to do that as a board. Can't we? I mean, he works for us, so.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. You're trying to direct something individually, and that's exactly what the edits have turned out to be. It's something that was added at the, yesterday.
I understand.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion, and someone else can make a motion perhaps to adopt a non-edited version, because the last thing I want to do is obstruct our adoption of the comprehensive plan. I really had good intent here, and I think it's a tighter, cleaner, more professional document, one that is now tight and clean, but we can go back to it later. So I'll withdraw my motion.
So we don't have a previous document, so I will make the motion that you just withdrew. Because I really want to get this thing wrapped up, and I am convinced there'll be no ramifications, adverse ramifications to this.
Well, I mean, the other option is that we look through these edits right now as a board and work
Okay.
through them.
Tonight?
Tonight.
Okay.
Go for it. So let's do it. Mr. Whitson, I think these were mostly your edits, if you would care to walk us through them.
Okay.
Go page by page.
Do we have a red line copy attached? And please specify which one that is, Mr. Curry.
Yes, it's the
Track changes?
Yes.
Very good.
And again, as I noted earlier, and as noted in board docs, those changes that are shown in purple are changes between the 2004 plan and what was sent to you by the Planning Commission for the most part. There are some situations where the Planning Commission made changes to their own document, and while they show up as a change, it can get a little confusing. However, very clearly, anything that's red was done after it came from the Planning Commission.
This is a lot to go through. I do have one other suggestion, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
Let me see if I can think this through. If we basically went ahead with my plan A, and then we went and read this individually, and then if there was anything that we wanted to change, then we call a meeting and change it and direct Mr. Curry to do that. Would that work?
I don't know if there's a way to do that
Okay,
in
well,
terms of process. And I mean, it's only 8 o'clock.
I'm,
And
well, I'm happy to get to, I want to
and
get this
so
done
I think
tonight,
if we can
yes.
get this
I
done
appreciate
tonight
that.
by working through these changes as a board.
I think it'll go very quickly, quite
I
frankly.
mean, I think it's a very constructive way to get the work done. It builds consensus, it builds
Right.
public
Right.
faith in the plan,
Great,
and I
okay,
think we should do it.
thank you.
Okay, do you want me to just,
Yes, please, if you could direct us to paragraphs and page numbers for the changes, that would be
so
fantastic.
Mr. Curry, are all the latest round of minor edits in red, you said?
Including those that were directed by the board previously. And so
Okay,
let me
so
just state that the cover page has a new date
Yeah.
on it, and the inside cover page has a statement recognizing.
So there are certain red colored track changes that might not be anything that I introduced, correct?
If it-
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so I may not be able to speak to all of them, but I'll try. So, on page, underneath the cover page, we put an in memoriam to Phil Irwin, which I reworked, so everyone can read that.
That's very nice.
Citing his favorite statement that we're incomparably different, so that's in there.
Of course, he always said incomparably different.
Oh, he did?
Mr. Curry.
Oh, okay. Well,
The table of contents does not show the changes because it ends up killing MS Word because it's all linked, but it is all updated.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Page 1, those do not appear to be any changes I made.
I thought the Rappahannock County was a universal change that you recommended.
Oh, okay, yeah, so basically, thank you. So throughout the document, it was inconsistent references to county and Rappahannock. Since it is Rappahannock County, every time that the word Rappahannock was without county, I suggested changing it, capitalizing both Rappahannock and county.
And so for commercial, for example, where you see that, that's a global fix for Oxford comma.
Oxford commas are used throughout the document, so meaning a comma preceding and, just for consistency because it was presented both ways.
Yeah.
Just another global change on page 2, county as a standalone word was sometimes capitalized, sometimes not, so I just defaulted to non-capitalization because it's not tied to the word Rappahannock as a proper noun. So throughout the document, anytime county is referred to in a generic form, it's not capitalized. Page 3, you can see again, this is the result of the universal edits where Rappahannock, I believe, was there originally. It now says Rappahannock County, just so we always use that same proper noun. The comprehensive plan is constructed on the basis of three sets of phrases: goals, objectives, and policies. So anytime goals and policies or goals and objectives is referenced in the document, it now says goals, objectives, and policies.
I think this was an Oxford comma too.
And Oxford comma is Oxford comma at the bottom of page 3. The town is called Washington, so anytime it says the town of Washington, the word T is not capitalized. And if anybody disagrees with any of this, feel free to jump.
Can we add Little Washington in front of it?
That was funny.
I'm serious though.
So again, county throughout, not capitalized when not tied to the word Rappahannock.
Comprehensive plan instead of plan.
Comprehensive plan was sometimes capitalized, sometimes not. So throughout the document, comprehensive plan is always capitalized, both words.
Sometimes just plan.
Sometimes it just said plan, right? So just so it's consistent throughout. Bottom of page 4, it must have been, it was capitalized. So again, universal change to not capitalize the word county. Same changes at the top of page 5 of the document, where town is not capitalized, county is not capitalized. Of county administrator generically not capitalized.
county in both instances, not capitalized. Composed is changed to the word comprised, which I think is the correct word.
I actually think composed was fine, but I'm not going to, split hairs.
This is, yeah, I'll never forget this night, trust me. All right.
Clinton, what the word is pretty hard.
What's that?
Clinton, what the word is pretty hard.
Yeah. Bottom of page 5, I'm skipping over things we've already addressed that are universal changes to save time. Funding for which is provided, it was phrasing, I believe.
Said whose.
Oh, it said for whose, so it's for which. Okay, that's chapter 1.
Woohoo.
Yay.
I can't believe people are still here.
Anahoax was possessive, went to plural, went to Anahoac.
Yeah, that, I believe that's now correct.
Yes.
Okay. Official colonization was possible. I wasn't sure about that phrase. It just said began. It was just a vague phrasing that I didn't understand. I did not insert the word, or the phrase mannequin.
That's an Oxford comma.
Oh, is it? Well, it's a semicolon.
Oh, no. Well, it must have been a semicolon. I don't know what it was.
Okay, so that should be changed to a comma.
That was, French settlers arrived from mannequin.
Comma.
Yeah, because that's an apposition, phrase in apposition, so that should be a comma.
Yeah.
That might have been one of the changes somebody provided. That could have been an errata change. I don't know.
It should just be a comma. Again, top of page 7, all universal edits, the word reportedly.
Why are we taking out the word between the state? Oh, because it refers to what was in the sentence
change
before.
any. Sorry?
Oh, I just see it as it's in purple, so it's not your change.
No.
Sorry.
I would not be changing any of that, trust me. It was, I thought it was well presented. Reportedly surveyed, I believe was introduced at some other time.
Where are we?
George Washington. And Mr. Frager, there you have a little Washington. I'm on page 7.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there, bottom page 7, it's the word basically, the county, I didn't understand why we would say basically. So it just makes a statement the county's climate. My iPad's gonna die here, so I'm gonna have to figure out a plan. Page 8, from 1970 to 2010, it was just a moving of the order of how that sentence was phrased. Ground elevation, primarily ranges, not range.
But it was altitude.
Sorry,
Where are you now?
I'm on page 8.
Biography.
Oh, thanks. Where can I plug it?
There's one down here.
Not for long range, that's fine. Oh, well, wow, thanks.
Thank you.
The word, I believe the word is page 8, word elevations, the elevations, not altitudes. Last paragraph, county, Thornton was Oxford comma issue. All universal changes county, and then at the bottom, that should be used in lieu of which, absent a comma preceding which. Oxford comma on page
9, stability, and it seemed to be that the word "the" was missing. And I believe the next word should have read percentage, not percent. Everything else in the following paragraph are universal changes, just change it to lowercase county. There was a missing word at the bottom of page 9 in that paragraph, so I put in thus. It just, something was,
No, there was a comma, thus comma.
okay. Universal changes, and Oxford commas on page 10. Universal changes, Oxford commas on page 11, Town of Washington. And then just to make the last 3 paragraphs on page 11 more readable, just a preceding sentence to state that the executive summary reads as follows, and this, I believe, was the executive summary of this hydraulic and water resources document. There was a typographic error. It said effect. It should have been effect. Their effect on the water supply, and then to meet the county's needs. And then just some phrasing changes in the first paragraph to improve readability. There's no substantive change there. The paragraph starts with map number 9, county, county again, not capitalized, that's a universal change. And then just to improve readability, that purple paragraph, Mr. Curry, I don't know, I didn't delete all that.
No, that's purple deletion. That's
Okay.
old stuff that was deleted by the,
With all other cover types comprising 6.2% combined.
that was, pointed out that the numbers didn't add up
Okay. Right.
to the math.
They didn't, yeah, the math didn't work. Commence changed to past tense. And then emerald ash borer is a proper noun. Mr. Curry, there's, it looks like you introduced a typographic error below table 2.5. It should say forest with 1 R.
Not possible.
And then you can see the edits to the bottom of page 12. Universal edits, and then economic impact was, can you help me there, Mr. Curry?
The statement below?
Yeah, it says direct economic impact. I'm just trying to see, just so for full disclosure, what changed.
It said effect, I believe.
Okay.
Direct effect or something.
Universal changes at the top of page 13. Landowners using the word who. Species was misspelled, it's been corrected. And then the insertion of, I believe, just the word and. I'm trying to.
It was a series, this series.
It was, yeah, to create a series. Top of page 14, it's just a direct statement. It was all in passive voice, and I think it makes it more readable, but if you disagree, that's okay with me. I don't want to change much here.
I would say this is kind of where you lost me, because I personally like the conversational tone of the way that it was before.
Okay.
I felt like this made it a much more clinical read,
Okay.
and I prefer the previous wording, and I think it It's a more circuitous way of talking, yes, but I,
That's fine, you can strike
it's
that.
the way I hear this document unfolding.
No problem. So, Mr. Curry, I think just revert back to that first paragraph in its original form.
It's on page 14 under historic trends of population.
Yeah,
To use what had been marked as deleted to better understand the people of Rappahannock County and their needs and requirements, an analysis of the population is necessary. And take out the section that goes from basic population to county require. I'm sorry, please go ahead, Mr. Whitson.
sure. The next paragraph, it was just the words between and to replace from and to, it just, for readability. And then during the same period, to replace in. Instead of constantly in population, I believe it's changed to steadily in population. And then one universal edit, anytime a decade is referenced, it's not written in possessive form. So it's 1960s, 1970s, and that's been made throughout the document. All right. Page 15, universal change, Rappahannock County. Page 16, county. The bottom of that same paragraph on page 16 under population density. Mr. Curry, where it says the words population density, I think it was just to make it consistent with the latter part of that same paragraph, just age distribution paragraph, that's just all readability. If anybody's concerned with that, feel free to reverse it, but I think it's more clear. Childbearing age group. Paragraph 16 again changes for readability. Same thing, 17.
About ages over rather than older.
Right. Second paragraph on page 17.
They said seem to portend.
Seem to portend just seemed like just, I don't know what that means. So. And then spectrum, just, man, I'm just trying to follow these. Mr. Curry, can you trace that word spectrum? Toward the lower end of the demographic.
I think it just said demographic.
Okay. Just seemed like the word was missing with either the 2000 or 2010 census and then a new sentence starting with the, just for readability, it was a run-on. Small adjustment to table 3.3. And then you can see some of the citations were not clear. It would be U.S. Census Bureau, and then no, it wasn't clear what the data source was. So where possible, I tried to at least make sure that our sources were used consistently anytime the same citation was used. Page 19, 1970 through 2016 instead of 2.
I mean, do we know that that's what it's for? Do we know that that data is through 2016 or is it to
Yes.
2016? Is it up, is it?
Well, it includes 2016, according to
Yeah,
the
it's,
table.
it's referencing this table.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, so that's why I changed it. Page 20, educational attainment. This is, all I can say is that this is just a really unwieldy paragraph, so it's been altered only for readability. If you want to just read that rather than me go through each one and make sure you're okay with the changes.
And I know there was at one point a note about one of the graphs and whether it should be included. Have any graphs been omitted?
No.
No.
Okay.
And bottom page 20 again for readability.
And this reference didn't match the following chart, and that was fixed.
Okay. Um, 21 citation cleanup, universal changes. I capitalized K for kindergarten. That's, I think it's normal use. And then one thing I should mention, page 22, a lot of the tables lacked commas to show thousands. So I just cleaned up all the tables to make sure that the numbers were clear and we know what they're representing. So you'll see really small changes to many of the tables, just that we're presenting numeric data all on the same basis. But obviously nothing within the tables in terms of content was changed. The title to graph 3.7 wasn't clear to me, just reading it, so just said September 30th, but September 30th
It
was
said
what?
student membership, September 30th membership.
Oh, it said member, yeah, so I just tried to make that clearer. As a percentage, and then Rappahannock County School is the proper noun, so system is not capitalized. But, you know, feel free to change it back if you want. Last paragraph on page 23, readability and universal changes. Page 24 of the table, those changes I think are self-explanatory. And then 24, if I remember correctly, these changes were intended to link the narrative description of the preceding tables.
This table includes local, retail, state, and federal.
Yeah,
But this paragraph that talks about everything but the retail.
okay. So it's just to make sure that the paragraph actually stated what was in the table, which it didn't before. On page 25, just per pupil as an adjective, and then local, state, and federal funds just for consistency throughout the document. Anytime local, state, and federal are used generically, they're not capitalized. Per pupil, again, in adjective form. And then again, Ms. Smith, this was like 2 through instead of 2, just to reflect what was in
Yeah,
the
to
table.
account for the
Yeah.
additional year. Great.
And let me take a moment to say thank you, everyone, for your patience. Bottom of page 26, Mr. Curry, it looks like there's just a typo after Washington DC, you just need a space. Or the word "to" in the second to
There's
last
a
paragraph.
space missing between the period after the C and the T and 2. In the second paragraph on, at the bottom of page 26.
are in the resolution.
I'm glad I got my Packers mask on. I'm invoking the Aaron Rodgers energy here.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson.
Let's see, Public and Environmental Finance Associates.
It just moved from the end of the sentence to the
Okay.
beginning.
And then the 2002 report, just to, again, for readability. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that LCI was never
we went straight to the acronym, so
Yep.
an unaware reader wouldn't know what LCI means.
Well, that was capitalized before, local composite index.
Adjusted gross income, I guess, we're treating as a proper, well, it was just inconsistent capitalization. Page 27. The word is principal, not principal, so that was a spelling error.
That was a good catch. We're on page 37.
Of the PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah. The paragraph that follows, it just was super unwieldy, and punctuation and references to counties and stuff were all over the place, so I cleaned that up. Of a locality's ability, it's singular, so I changed it from plural possessive to singular. Bottom page 27 of the document, self-explanatory. I mean, the good news is that I think you're now aware of a lot of the universal changes. Of the three, the last full paragraph before table 313, again, just readability and capitalization and consistency of the use of the word county as we're talking about neighboring localities, and then per capita hyphenated. And then again, generic use of a county, it's not capitalized. Essential public services, the general population. Mr. Curry, at the end of the population projections paragraph.
No, what required by was further up in there.
Essential
Oh, I
public
just-
services
yeah, I-
required by the general population.
So I just tried to remove the passive voice there. Whatever. I just said in a locality, the age components, I don't know what that word was there for, so it's, I believe it was intended to be composition. Populace is just local population to be consistent with prior use of the same phrase. Last two paragraphs of page 29, I think those are all readability changes. Speak up if you don't like the changes, please. It's no problem. And then this header on page 30, it was just some of the headers were capitalized, some weren't, so it's just to make it look cleaner. Item 1, it was like by rights retirees and former residents of the county. They continue to practice to retirees and former residents of the county as a place to live, just to make it more direct. Capitalization. And then at the bottom, it's the same change in item 1, I believe, as above. Capitalization of a header on page 31. One, two, three, 4, and 5, it was just capitalization and some cleanup to improve readability. Equates was used in lieu of equate, so subject verb agreement, I believe. Impact is just used a lot, so I tried to change it to effect, but if you prefer impact, that's fine, it's overused.
I don't have a preference. I just want to make sure everyone on the board is able to follow along and see if anybody has any feedback or things they need to revisit? Are we okay? All right, very good. Thank you. So sorry to
All
interrupt.
right, bottom of page 31, census, should be capitalized. 32, this paragraph was just pretty tough to get through, so these changes were just intended to improve readability. Mr. Curry knows I use my, where you can, I don't use may when you can use might. Someone taught me that a long time ago. Universal changes and then just some slight edits. Paragraph 1 under economy, chapter 4. Readability and capitalization. Second paragraph, introduction of the word farming there.
That looks like it's an Oxford comma.
Okay. And then on page 33, turn down, I think it was supposed to be downturn. Yeah. Okay, so I changed it to downturn. Small edits there. Table on page, the next page, table 4.1, just clean up and consistent capitalization. Universal change to Rappahannock County, so we're not saying Rappahannock. Capitalization, the bottom page 35. Readability changes to the last full paragraph and line preceding table 4, or I'm sorry, last full paragraph prior to table 4.3, and then just a universal change to county, cleanup of the citation for table 4.3. And then you'll see throughout where we introduce acronyms that haven't been spelled out or explained, just so the public knows what the acronyms represent. In this case, it was the North American Industry Classification System, so that's now been written out.
That's the change I didn't make, that dealers is a term.
Say that
linked in.
again.
Dealers, you didn't like the word dealers, but that is
I don't
the
care.
term used in that data set.
38, pretty minor. Reversal, universal changes, and then changes for readability preceding table 4.5. Everyone here, still here, should get some kind of reward. Value of farmland, cleanup for readability. And then you'll see throughout it said U.S. Census of Agriculture, and it was just confusing whether it was U.S. Census, and it's a U.S. Department of Agriculture Census Bureau within the Department of Agriculture. .41, those are just readability changes. A large amount of land, and so disproportionately, it's just readability. Harvested cropland, I think it was just completing that sentence. 43, very minor changes. Just use the word data there. Page 44, between those two tables, again, just readability. Lines preceding table 4.5, same thing, minor. .46, same thing. Universal edits, and then up above, just readability, just a few words. Chapter 5, same thing, minor, Page 48, universal changes largely, and then at the bottom, Mr. Curry, the attached aerial maps show the general location, that whole
That
phrase.
was from your work session.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I just, rather than an ampersand, I spelled out and. Just the description, Amos, so Mr. Fraser, just make sure that I didn't change anything that.
Some of these changes were
Okay,
by the board earlier, the
okay, yeah, I can't,
the number of restaurants and stuff.
Single-family housing units in Chester Gap is adjective form, bottom page 50. Universal edits, I said by the name of its original tenant, it's not referred to by the tenant itself, the Alien Factory. Again, that word basically, I just replace that throughout. Page 52, pretty minor. Bottom page 52, same thing. 53, primarily capitalization, and changes for readability.
Are they no longer referring to the River District as River District Arts?
I think it's,
That's what used to be on the blue sign. I made that change initially.
I understood it was just called the River District, like the district itself. You can change that back, that's fine.
I mean, I think we need, that's what's on the highway sign, is River District Arts, and that's why it reads that way.
Okay.
Which is, and then, that would just revert back to, and in the River District Arts along Water Street.
Where is that?
The bottom of page 52, second paragraph from the bottom, the last line.
Okay, so page 53, just one note, the refuse and recycling center, Ms. Smith, over toward you, I think a couple times it was referred, well, here it wasn't, but it's Flatwood, singular. Bottom page 53, just readability changes. Yeah, and then just numbers less than 10, typically you spell them out. Housing units instead of homes. Minor changes on page 55, most of which are universal edits. 56, self-explanatory and universal changes. Year, let's see, all year round, I guess, was just to add the hyphen, cleanup of citation on page 57. Whom changed to which at the bottom of page 57. On page 58. I'm not sure.
It said PD9.
What's that?
It stated PD9. where-
Oh, yeah, it was just to spell it out.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that's capitalized or not.
I would have thought that would be capitalized.
Yeah, I would think planning district 9 is capitalized.
And then the other thing I saw was American Community Survey, 5-year estimate, you want to capitalize, probably should be capitalized consistently.
And I think planning district, it should be planning district, both should be capitalized. And then, I mean, you have more experience with this than I do, Mr. Frazier. But then I think it is traditionally with a dash and then a 9.
Yeah, numeral 9. That's
Okay.
the way I've always seen it.
Then, Mr. Curry, I know that this one source is used a lot, I believe, throughout the document. This is American Community Survey, 5-year estimate. So just make sure that that's all consistent throughout. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Hopefully I can just have enough battery to keep going here. I think I'm just,
Okay.
it's barely keeping up with me, I think, is the issue. Yeah, so I think the planning district 9 thing should, I don't know how many times it appears in the document.
I think that's the only time. You could, as noted in the gallery, just say Rappahannock Regional Commission.
Yeah.
There changed to its at the bottom, and then other small edits, including universal ones. That's page 58. The historic sites paragraph, it just wasn't clear what the last sentence intended. So hopefully it's clear now. And then traceries, which is the abbreviation of the company EHT Traceries, which did the architectural survey. We just set it up for abbreviation later.
Which was already used later that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then page 59, all at the bottom, those are all just minor. Using the word which, and then to determine was inserted. It's just readability, county government, generic use of county. Bottom page 59.
Community facilities, first line, it's fine. It's a universal change.
Then, yeah, so educational facilities, I just included the direct phrase, the county operates 2 public schools, period. It was like 2 public schools that are operated by the county, serve the citizens of Rappahannock, so. Beneath table 5.8, those are universal changes, and then bottom page 60, just clean that up.
Middleburg Academy was removed as it's.
What's that?
Middleburg Academy was previously
Yeah,
listed as one of the private
Middleburg,
schools.
thank you, yeah, Middleburg Academy is out of business unfortunately, so that's been removed.
Oh, I added Ann Luray because I just opened that.
Oh yeah, that's a good catch, for sure. Page 61 you're talking about?
Yeah, Lord Fairfax.
Mm-hmm. Community college. And then the library paragraph, just kind of a little cleanup there.
And some of this came in through earlier changes.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
Most of it came in through earlier changes. Seen
yeah, and
here.
I think the bicycling and stuff,
That was all,
That was in the errata.
yeah.
yeah.
And then the next paragraph, we actually know how many trailheads there are now because of the, I don't mean to laugh, but earlier this year, we had a pretty good handle on all the trailheads into the park, so just, we know the number. Took a while to figure that out, actually.
Air Park was an errata.
universal edits. Top of page 63, I would remove, I missed that ampersand, but whatever, I'm not. And then companies, halls, this is just minor changes. Compromise, I think someone else had found that error.
That was a different place.
That was, oh, really?
It's a couple times in here.
The Shenandoah National Park compromise, I believe it was supposed to be comprises, so that's what's in there. And then defines just present tense instead of past. Oxford commas. STEM instead of derive, I don't know, I mean, who cares, either way. Consistent capitalization of headers, universal changes, and now we're on to page 64. Capitalization, then setting up E. coli with the Latin term in full form, I guess, is what that was. I think we just went to E. coli, but then it was used in its full form later. So throughout the document, wherever we introduce an abbreviation or an acronym, we should set it up first for the reader.
Yeah, what's down here? The next page.
Okay. Page 65, pretty minor. Again, spelling out and then an acronym. Brook trout discussion, just a few little nits.
Where are you now?
Page 66. Rap flow, there's a typo I see, Mr. Curry, just missed an E at watershed at the bottom of page 66. Throughout the document, the word gauge was misspelled. So I'm now on page 67. Self-explanatory, and I don't mean to rush through these if I'm just trying to identify anything that's not universal or hasn't been addressed previously. Rappahannock County Senior Center, which is operated by RRCS, so again, it was just setting up the acronym before we used it. And I just thought the precise number of 155 I think was, there are more than 200 volunteers with over 150 responders. I just backed off of exact numbers. That just seemed a little...
That was accurate for one day, probably.
Right, yeah. Some readability changes on page 68.
Wouldn't sheriff's office, since it's a constitutional officer, be capitalized? Sheriff.
I mean, I would think that that's a proper place, but
Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Curry, maybe you just flag that one and that was changed elsewhere. That's
under
fine.
police protection in the middle of page 68,
So what do you want me to capitalize, both? Or?
sheriff's and
If it's,
office.
yeah, if it's used in conjunction with Rappahannock County, but then generically it shouldn't be, but I don't know if it is, so that's fine. I'm on page 69, those are, I think, all. So, yeah, so like on page 69, there's
just a little bit down from the top, the sheriff's office. If you want to change that, that's fine. I'm not, just, I think you can find those.
Yeah, I think we should capitalize that as well.
And then, Ms. Smith, I think I'm just flipping down to the bottom, page 70. I think that was the language you proposed at our last meeting about the sewer authority after you went to their meeting, right?
Yes, let me check.
I think so.
It looks
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, I didn't change any of that. '71, just really minor. Again, it's just called Flatwood.
Let's take about a 5-minute break, and then I think we can finish up. I think we can finish up then
Thanks, everyone.
the rest of the document.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Randy, you didn't know what you were getting into.
Here, strong and wide and proud.
Yeah, I can't believe how drained my battery is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Woodson.
Ms. Smith, Mr. Jackson, who you know attends a lot of regional meetings, he pointed out that it's not, the proper term is not Planning District 9, it's actually the Rappahannock, Rapidan Planning District, RRPD.
RRRC,
RR,
Regional Commission.
okay, and then Mr. Curry, he's suggesting that Rappahannock, Shenandoah, Warren should be R-S-W, page 88, I think.
Hold on.
And then on page 53, an erroneous reference to our having a jail, which I missed that.
What page you on there?
He thinks page 53.
We have a jail. Just don't
This is great, everyone's involved. Team effort here. Right, yeah, and
What page?
he thinks somewhere in 52, 53, it just talks about what we have.
One paragraph.
What are we looking for?
The word jail, I'm looking for it.
Right here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, in Washington.
Did you find it?
Yeah. It's on page 53.
Oh, 50, okay. Okay, I got it. Oh, yeah, right. Thank you, good catch. And then I'm just gonna trust Mr. Jackson as he insists that town of Washington, at least according to how the Commonwealth does it, the T in town should be capitalized, so I'm not, I mean, if everyone agrees to that, we can just switch that back.
I think that that's probably correct, but
I've been taught both ways.
When I looked it up, it looked correct.
with a capital T?
No.
With a lowercase
Yeah.
t?
Yeah, so just whatever.
I just
I don't need
do
to say
whatever
whatever,
he
that
said.
sounds. Yeah, I mean, I was taught that you don't, because it's called Washington, not the town of Washington, but whatever, just,
Or Little Washington.
or LIDDL, no, whatever. So just, if everyone wants, we can just change it back to capital T, I don't care.
It's not.
No, small t is correct.
Well, on their website, they have capital T.
I always thought small t was correct, but whatever. Okay, so we're on page 70.
70.
try to get back in the flow here. Yeah, this whole thing about public water systems at the schools was just, the writing of it was a little unwieldy. So I just, page 70, second to last paragraph, I rephrased that, just explain why they're deemed public wells and made it more clear. And then, as Ms. Smith said, she attended that meeting, came back with this language after conferring with the sewer authority, so I didn't have anything to do with that addition. And then the telephone service paragraph on page 71, just some rephrasing, near and dear to all our hearts who rely on landline service. And then the Page County agreement, just some small edits to improve readability, I believe. Bottom page 71.
Should we include recycling in that list, a long-term waste hauling, comma,
Sure.
recycling, comma, and disposal agreement?
Yeah, that's a
Because I just want to make it clear that we were very, deliberate in including
Yeah.
recycling in that agreement.
Yeah, that's great. Planned public capital improvements. Just small changes there, readability.
And fix the tense. We're not working to hire a consultant anymore.
You're not what?
When the planning commission wrote this part, the county was working to hire a consultant. We've now hired a consultant.
Mm-hmm. Cultural resources, I believe Ms. Black introduced that, and I did not touch any of that, so everything under cultural resources is unchanged.
Looks good.
Page 73. Mostly universal changes, non-capitalization of county, and then
Some of these road mileages and stuff changed from VDOT's comments. So update to the 2018 data.
okay.
Actually, they wanted us to update to 2019 data, but the 2019 no longer categorizes things into these categories: hard surface, all weather, light surface.
Okay.
Wasn't the time to make the change, so get it up to 2018.
Page 74, traffic volumes.
All the numbers changed from
Yep.
VDOT's comments.
Okay, so these were not changes I made. Commuting patterns, just, just a few little small changes for readability. Just use of Washington DC, I believe.
What are you?
I'm on page 76. And then just some minor changes I won't go into. If you're okay with them, we'll just move on. Mr. Curry, page 77, occurs to me, it should be conservation and agriculture districts, not agricultural.
Yes.
Okay.
The zoning district is agriculture district.
Okay,
Agricultural and
Right.
forestal districts.
but zone conservation and agriculture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that change is made, and then again, it's just setting up the acronym, so people actually know what the acronym means. That's on the bottom of page 77. Just some cleanup, bottom of page 78. Sludge monitor, I don't think that's a proper noun. I wouldn't want my name to be sludge monitor. And then DEQ, I believe it was set up earlier in the document, but wasn't initially, so yeah, I think it was set up earlier and then as an acronym, then spelled out, so we cleaned that up. Headers capitalized consistently, small changes about on page 79, relatively small changes on page 80. And then this phrasing about the Conservation Alliance, which disbanded, it was just confusing what exactly they'd done. Might want to look at this carefully, because I believe that the intent of the paragraph was to say that whatever money they had prior to dissolution was given back to the county's general fund.
There was a change from the errata that was then changed.
Okay. So is it okay now? Yeah. And then I think Water Quality Improvement Fund, I would just spine out Virginia. And then including to replace that includes. And then 81, all this stuff.
Notes from.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't change anything. I mean, it's just was that second paragraph about all the rivers flowing to the, I mean, it was just confusing. So it's like we have these streams there, the headwaters, they flow in the Rappahannock River and then ultimately to Chesapeake Bay. Universal changes takes us to about page 82. And then really, I mean, there's not a whole lot. I found that I think the goals and principles and policies have been worked and reworked over the years, so they're pretty clean. I don't want to change anything that bothers anyone. I believe agritourism should just be one word, not capitalized. Page 85.
Principle 2, policy 2 was, the wording was in tough shape.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just. Just try to make that clearer. And then biking and horseback ride trails, I believe a citizen introduced those additions. Clean up, I believe, should be phrased that way. Clean dash up.
I don't mean to, and that's the purpose of the exercise. I don't remember exactly the reason that ridge tops was included from the planning commission, but I know that this was very, very purposefully included.
The term in the Code of Virginia actually has a section on ridges and crests. And so in a lot of places, ridge tops was changed to ridges and crests to link over to the Code of Virginia, which is referenced elsewhere, the citation. But in this particular policy, the Planning Commission took this policy and then tacked on to the end, also ridges and crests, rather than putting it into the series of things that they didn't want to development on ridges and crests to diminish the natural scenic values. So it was just very awkward. But the ridge tops is stuff that the Planning Commission took out and replaced with ridges and crests.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Subject verb agreement, policy 2 was off, so that's been fixed. So capitalization of, or non-capitalization of erosion and sediment control measures, because it's not a proper noun, and it just said ENS, but I didn't know what that meant. Not when I read it.
Right.
Policy 4, principle 3.
Policy 4, principle 3. So again, throughout the document, anytime we're talking about goals, principles, and policies, sometimes it would refer to 2 of the 3. So I just made sure that we're always talking about them as kind of a collective group of statements. small changes on page 87, I think self-explanatory. Aging in place, it was just kind of hanging out there by itself. Should probably be hyphenated in adjective form, I would think, at aging in place opportunities, but I don't care. I mean, at this point, I'm sure we'll look at this again soon. Universal changes take us to the bottom of page 89. Thanks again, everyone, for hanging in there. Small changes leading up to principle 7.
I mean, if we're here, we may as well fix aging in places. They're in the middle of page 87.
Yeah, it should just be hyphenated.
What page was it?
The middle of page 87, right above principle 5, which is aging in place. Should be aging hyphen in hyphen place.
I'm not finding it. Page, principal.
Sorry, I just, bear with me. Where were we? I accidentally
I
flipped
think we're
it.
at the bottom of page 88.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yep, pretty straightforward. Again, universal changes, county. Page 89, all universal changes previously identified. Small edits to the top of page 90. Universal changes through the bottom of page 90. I don't believe that consider requests for yeah, that was not one of mine. And then, yeah, and then 7,
Because it said approve requests rather than consider requests.
and then 7, part B, it was just, I think we needed the word designations because it was like, just to make it clear what we're talking about. Small edits at the bottom of page 91. Mr. Parrish's Country Store Edition, he owns that one. It's number 11 under Principle 7. It's great. 92, it was just the phrasing, implementation of, such as, and then generic use of zoning and subdivision. Universal changes under the beginning of chapter 7.
It's feature land use narrative.
That was not mine.
That's a change from the work session that, with the maps coming out, that had to be, because it used to say future land use map.
Bottom of page 94, I think, Mr. Curry, the intended edit was, it was like, there's this phrase referring to the Rappahannock River for its own sake and due to.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to actually, it was corrected, or in my edits, it says protect the headwaters of the Rappahannock River given its importance. So that word both should not be in there if we take that approach. It was just like for its own sake and due to, just Rappahannock River given its importance as a vital regional source of water. Page 95, I think almost all of that we've already covered. Definitely look at Mr. Curry under future land use. I just want to make sure that I didn't nothing here strays into the area of substantive changes. I don't believe so, but,
No, most of that change was from the work session, from the
oh, right.
option.
Okay, sorry, I'm having a
A, B, or
hard time
C.
differentiating. Water and Sewer Authority, just kind of cleaned up that.
This is where Mr. Supervisor Whitson had a comment in suggesting that
Right.
significant needs were required, but that's not something that the board.
I just thought that it was not correct to say no significant capital projects are anticipated over the coming 5 years. We don't know that. So I think by removing that, we're not going out on a limb we shouldn't.
They have, or
Yeah, right, the study. Uh-huh. So I think I'm comfortable with that if everyone else is. I just didn't want us to be stating that we know that, or that we don't anticipate any capital upgrades. I just thought that was a little overwrought.
I think we should just leave out that section, I think we should just say the Greyville sewage treatment plant and collection system was completed in January 1987.
And then you have that other language elsewhere anyway?
Yes.
Okay, so just delete the rest of that. We're probably supported by real estate and personal property. Real. I'm not sure what happened there.
it's paid by taxpayers in the county. And,
Okay.
the prospect of paid responders.
Okay. And then again, acronyms, spelling them out so we know what we're talking about, lease versus purchase versus build. I don't think that's not my edit. On page 98. Under general government office space.
I can't remember who, I think maybe Mr. Frazier has to add that during the work session.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Somebody.
I think we should just, I mean, that's kind of a, I don't know why we'd even put something like that in the comp plan, that we're thinking about the difference between lease and purchase. I mean, it doesn't make sense to continue leasing. I don't even know why somebody on the planning commission wanted that.
Versus build was the added in. Well, the comprehensive plan would set up your capital improvements plan, which your planning commission is supposed to consider and compare to your comprehensive plan, so that if you did have development and you did accept proffers, they could be applied towards the development that is consistent with both. Now, here, we don't do development, so, or proffers. Money proffers. Transportation plan, that was an addition requested by MDOT.
Yep, I just have to get back to where I was. Sorry about that. What page was the, oh, okay, I'm back to
97, 98.
Okay. The rural long-range plan,
That was VDOT
earlier.
requested that we
Okay.
reference that plan.
And then the rural character of many of the county's secondary roads is important to the agricultural and natural feel of the county. I don't know, I'm trying to recall what. It's difficult to. I'm just trying to trace the edit. I think it's fine. I mean, it doesn't change anything. Um, Second to last paragraph 98, just some readability, punctuation corrections. Broadband communications plan, just changes for readability.
Can we read through this last paragraph right before the broadband communications plan and see what changes? Is it just made a might? What's the given citizens' concerns? Where did that come from?
Some
What was it?
villages, because a village can't have concerns.
Okay.
And then the comma after villages just suggested there was something missing, so. And through truck is changed to adjective form. And then just the consistent use, when we talk about Shenandoah National Park, we just call it that instead of park, or Shenandoah Park, or Shenandoah National Park. So the bottom page 99, and then one thing, comprehensive plan, sometimes it's capitalized, sometimes it wasn't, sometimes I think one word was, so it's just all been straightened out. I did not touch the 80-foot tower stuff, I don't believe.
That was, probably wasn't even the version you looked at.
Right. And then like the use of the word co-location, I just, you can look at that bottom page 100, I made just some adjustments for readability,
There was,
I think.
there was spelled differently in different places.
Okay. So just consistency. And then page 101, that's all pretty straightforward. And then again, just spelling out completely or setting up acronyms. So like Virginia Department of Historic Resources, it was just abbreviated before we knew what it was. Virginia Department of Transportation, same thing. Minor changes take us to the bottom of page 102. And then just some capitalization corrections preceding table 7.1. Capitalization corrections and writing out of an acronym in the in table 7.1 at page 103. Decommissioning of generation facility, I think it's just readability and clarity. And then we dove into some like megawatt abbreviations that just made it more clear by writing it out. On page 104, universal changes to the bottom of page 104. There were a number of places where
Map numbers here are starting to change because the old village maps, which were 15, were taken out.
Okay.
universal changes to 105, and then chapter 8. Mr. Curry, is it correct that, I just want to make sure we're all clear on this, future land use plan should not be capitalized, or?
What? Where?
I'm sorry, on page 106.
Paragraph after zoning.
Where it says in chapter 7, I just don't know if that was, I don't think it should be, but if, I realize maybe that one might be an issue. And then, special exception, special use, try to clean up that because we tend to call them SEs and SUPs. I don't know if I've glossed over them, they're just misspellings or misuse of effect and affect, verb versus noun, so I try to catch those.
And that's why people use impact.
So you didn't have to figure it out, okay. Right, so, but those have been corrected, and then page 108, all that's just, I think we've already talked about that, most of these.
And did we get an answer about future land use plan, whether or not that should be capitalized?
Yeah, we should look at chapter 7 and see.
Chapter 7 is future land use plan.
Okay. Oh, that's the title of the chapter?
Yeah.
Okay, so go, I guess just go,
Which page was that?
it's used a few times on these recent pages, so maybe just mark it. There's one on page 108 and
There's one on page 106, I think it's the first
106,
instance
yeah,
where I
yeah.
see it in the second paragraph.
Yep.
So just out of curiosity, it says 33,634 acres in conservation easement,
Mhm.
which is 19.67% of the county's land area. Are they, Mr. Curley, is that including the park, or is that exclusive of the park?
I think that includes the park. And those
Inclusive?
numbers have all been scrubbed.
That's including the park? I mean,
The total area.
total
does.
acreage includes the
Yeah.
park, okay.
Yeah.
So it's really,
So if you
outside the
take
park,
that-
it's really a much higher percentage of the private property that's in the
Right,
scenic easement.
yeah, but not the total land mass.
That's not available for development or whatever,
Right.
however you want to. yeah.
Got it.
All right, if everybody's with us, I think are we at the bottom of 106 for subdivision? And that's just the comprehensive plan.
Yep, those are just universal changes. There's another reference to future land use plan. This just jogged my memory, somewhere in here, there's discrete versus discrete. So I think that was just another universal change, so as in standalone or separate, it should be CRETE, not EET. And then minor changes take us to the bottom of 108. And then I mentioned earlier, now, I've seen this elsewhere in the document where we capitalize goals, principles, and policies. But here I just, again, want to make sure that when we're talking about goals, principles, and policies as a group of statements, that we always refer to it. And if you believe it should be capitalized because it relates back to that chapter, then we can change that. It wasn't in the original, I guess, 2004 document.
Where are you seeing that
I'm
right?
at,
Oh, right. Oh,
under
number
commercial,
5.
commercial area plan, page 109.
Yeah.
And then LCA was just using the acronym. And then completing page 109 and to 110. Small changes. I think maybe nearby environs could be redundant. I don't care. It's just one word. It just said environs. Maybe environs implies nearby. I don't know. Probably. Yeah, so and we could take out nearby. And then LCA shows up again, but we've now set up the acronym previously, and then USGS was just thrown in there without spelling it out. So I think it's now just spelled out US Geological Survey instead of USGS. It's only used a couple of times, I believe. And then it referred to, the document still referred to Rappahannock National Bank. And since we're updating this now, I changed it to Atlantic Union Bank. I don't know if everyone's okay with that. And oh, here's one of the discretes as opposed to discrete. The current site of Mountainside Medicine, just to make it clear.
You've lost me. What page are you on?
I'm sorry.
111.
111.
Okay, good, that's what page I'm on too.
Okay. Yeah, you might just look, there are quite a few changes and corrections there under land use and existing conditions. Just make sure you're okay with them. And then FEMA was, I believe, abbreviated, and I just thought we should either spell it out or at least set up the acronym. Bottom of page 111, the 20-year period, maybe just everyone could quickly read this paragraph. It was just, the reference to 20 years, just, it wasn't clear what it was referring to, so I tried to shift it around. The county's comprehensive plan has identified, I believe it's the county's comprehensive plan itself for over 20 years, has identified the study area.
Probably now it's 40 years, but.
Can we back up a minute? I don't think that we actually did Dr. McHugh's property to commercial. Why is that in there?
The
They
planning
applied for
commission,
that, but they had to withdraw it.
that was, the planning commission said that that was done, that was one of the
No,
changes.
no, that was wrong because they had to withdraw it. The property was being accessed by way of a right-of-way.
I don't know if it's right or wrong, I just know there was one and the planning commission changed it to 2 because of that. I think Mr. Connick said
I'm
that.
telling you, they had to withdraw it because when they applied, it was being pushed through, but then they had to stop because the property, Dr. McHugh's property is accessed by a right-of-way right beside the old toll house. And they already had a case up in Front Royal. I'm sorry I didn't catch this earlier, but that property's not rezoned. That's why his practice didn't expand. He's under a special use permit there.
So could we mark that to check and not to hold up adoption, but
We could, yeah.
we could revisit that paragraph.
We could just strike that whole sentence. It's not going to change anything in the long run.
Mr. Frazier, so you're talking about this at the bottom page 111?
Yeah, let me go back and find it. I got a,
The current site of Mountainside Medicine was also rezoned from agricultural to general commercial. I thought it was rezoned.
no, it never was done. He had to withdraw his application because the property is accessed by a right-of-way across agricultural zone property.
So where's
You-
zoned? Right here.
You can't access commercial across something that's zoned agriculture.
So he got something there. Was that a special exception?
No, he's got a special use permit that he was using ever since I think it was
Okay.
it was a chiropractor or dentist office previously.
Uh-huh.
And all he did was just change the type of practice, but not the size.
So let's just strike that sentence.
Yeah, and why don't we change the beginning sentence to there have been few significant rezonings?
Right,
Then that way we're not saying exactly how many.
right,
And if we do find out that something was done, we can go back and add it.
okay.
And then if we make that from 2 to few and strike that last sentence, that we're starting at the current site through in 2007, does that sound agreeable to everyone?
It's clean.
Yeah, and something happened at the start of the paragraph, something happened with the editing.
I'm sorry, I got off track here.
There have been 2,
Page 111.
Thank you.
Oh.
Page
You
111.
could say one of which is the current site of the Atlantic Meeting.
yeah, there you go.
That's the last, all right.
Yeah, so there have been, what did you say, Ms. Smith?
Few significant.
There have been few significant rezonings of general commercial overlay district, comma, one of which is the current one of which without the capital T. Something got,
That'll work.
and then,
And
Just-
you-
I
I
guess
don't know
strike
why
that
you would
last
ever need a
sentence.
rezoning in the overlay, because the overlay by definition changes the zoning.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. We've got all something we can
We're
agree
close,
with.
we're close.
Sound close.
You should, I suggest we press
Put it
on.
back in January.
okay, but Mr. Curry, the first sentence, let's just be clear, the first sentence, Ms. Smith changed it to there,
Few.
Yep, there have been few significant rezonings in the general commercial overlay district, one of which is the current blah, 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 blah. Keep going, delete the last sentence.
okay, you got it,
Perfect.
all right. And then page 112, just goofy capitalization and stuff. This term land bays, I think it was capitalized sometimes and not in others, so it's just consistent. And I just changed it to Rappahannock County Elementary School, zoning ordinance capitalized. Cleaned up of the header at the bottom of page 113. And then this bullet point list, remove the capitalization, and then just bottom of page 114, just some little nits, and I think that's it.
Was stormwater 2 words, stormwater 1 word, number?
Yeah, stormwater is one word.
I guess that's a style guide sort of thing. We always use groundwater 1 word, stormwater 2 words. Particularly.
Woo-hoo.
All right, are there any other questions about these changes?
I may have had one.
You didn't ask him if he could repeat that, Mr. Frazier.
No, I was,
All right, so I think we have a motion from Mr. Parrish to adopt the plan. I don't recall that we have a second. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. Is there any further discussion?
Thank you for getting this done tonight. That would be my
Yeah,
I think
thank you,
it's great.
everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone who stayed.
oh, well, I guess it's too late, huh?
Well, so if you're adopting the resolution as presented, it provides still the opportunity for tweaks. I found a few
We're
error spaces.
adopting the plan as presented to include the tweaks that we just made,
Yeah.
and you notated them, so we're
Yes.
good to go.
And it includes allowing for subsequent non-substantive formatting of proofreading related amendments.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I did have one change that went by me.
Yes, Mr. Frazier.
That was on page 97. Water and Sewer Authority, the Sperryville Sewage Treatment Plant, and then there was a deleted, I don't know that we ever discussed this, no significant capital projects are anticipated over the coming 5 years.
We did call that out. What were you thinking it should say?
Well, that was deleted, I don't know why it was deleted.
It was deleted because I just don't think we can say that.
We don't have any projects planned.
Well, I think when we revisited it, and I think Mr. Curry, did you capture a change to this section?
Well, yes, so what, it said no significant capital projects are anticipated over the coming 5 years.
I don't think it's...
Originally, because I think Alex Sharp answered that when I sent him an email. Yeah.
But I think it could do us more harm to remove that than to leave it in place.
Well, what was added was the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority commissioned an engineering study to evaluate necessary capital upgrades, the results of which were not yet available. And then tonight, there was a decision to delete that sentence. So,
Well, the reason the planning commission discussed that at length in one of our meetings was that it could just be another tool in the toolbox in case we do have a project that comes in and we want to turn it down because we don't have the infrastructure to handle it. But if we've got an open-ended paragraph there that says basically we might be, enlarging the plant, we would be doing away with our safeguards.
what this plan reads now is the Sperryville Sewage Treatment Plant and Collection System was completed in January 1987, period.
Yeah, but that one sentence was put in there for a reason by the planning commission. No significant capital projects are anticipated over the coming 5 years, and we had debated whether or not that should be in there. We all decided it should be.
I wrote that sentence back after talking to Alex like 2 years ago.
It's a
Good
good
to put it back in
sentence.
if that's the will of the board.
That's fine.
Fine.
Yeah, I'd really like to see us put it in there. I'm sorry that I missed that one, but I was trying to run through here with y'all, and I somehow missed that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second with the changes, through the changes that we have discussed this evening. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll go ahead and give a roll call vote. Mr. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Parrish?
Aye.
And I also. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Very good.
Good team effort.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. We did have a few items we glossed over this afternoon in that session. One being any reports that anyone would want to revisit, correspondence, anything of that nature that we should touch upon before we adjourn. Thank you for a very lengthy recounting of county administrator activities, Mr. Curry. I do appreciate that very much, and all the work that's being done. And then there was the other item we delayed in the interest of time this afternoon was matters presented by the board. Is there anything else anyone wishes to discuss this evening?
Yeah, not knowing what the exact makeup of the planning commission is for next year, I think perhaps the board should somehow have a meeting either sometime this month or the very beginning of next month to go over, I guess, what this board is actually looking for out of the planning commission. We seem to have several snags.
Well, I think that we did have a very good joint meeting the other month specifically about the comp plan. I know there will be some changes I anticipate in the makeup of the planning commission this coming year. So I think once we hold our organizational meeting and the planning commission holds their organizational meeting, I think that would be an appropriate time for us to have a joint meeting and discuss together our goals for the coming year. Does that sound like what you had in mind, Mr. Frazier?
I think so, if we can, do that.
I think the more we can get on the same page with the planning commission, the better we will all fare and the less time we will expend doing things that don't work between the two. Any other business?
I would just like to say that the parade committee did an awesome job, not having a parade, but having village floats throughout the county. I think a lot of people really enjoyed going around seeing the floats. I'm very happy to say that the Flint Hill Village float was selected as the winner. They worked really hard.
Congratulations.
And I'm really glad, but I just thought it was a nice substitute for the parade. Hopefully we won't have to substitute next year.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's a very good point.
thanks a lot.
And they did look great, and I hope everyone, in particular the children, all enjoyed the floats very much this year. And Santa. I did want to mention, we had it come up in public comment last month. Some people wondered if the venison donation program was still working with the food pantry. And I did make a call to the number listed on the food pantry website, and they are still taking donations for the food pantry, and they will process them for the food pantry if people do happen to get a deer that they can't use.
Yes, and we actually had contact with them this month, and they reached out after, I think, processing a deer and said, listen, $50 is a little bit low. And I agreed to change it to 75, which is still well below the market price.
Good, yeah, I noticed that they were, on the budget, it was $250 to the processor, which I assume was 5 deer. Yeah, but that's fine to change it to $75.
It has to be mutually beneficial or they're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Any further comments? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. That was a good idea, Christine, to go on with it tonight.